tough. He's a Republican dragon with his truthful flight. Fights the battles unseen in the shadows of the night. From policy to passion, he breaks it all down, giving a voice to the voiceless, wearing his crown. Caffeine-fueled mornings, the smoke curls dance. Puppy at his feet, giving life one more chance. Through algorithms and bias, he cuts straight and clear. Michael's roar echoes in the hemisphere. Michael Bass roars through the screen, he flies, painting red and blue skies with his fiery cry. He's the world's watchdog, calling out the bluff. Right-wing swagger, but his heart's pretty tough. No sound bites allowed is his ultimate creed. A dragon's perspective where facts are the seed. Standing tall on his battlefield of thoughts, guarding the truth that others forgot. Michael Bass roars through the screen, he flies, painting red and blue skies with his fiery cry. He's the world's watchdog, calling out the bluff. Right-wing swagger, but his heart's pretty tough.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. This is No Sound Bites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, the political dragon here in our offices in the Bronx, New York. I'm happy to be here with you today. It is June 10th. It is 7:02 p.m., middle of the week, and there is madness that is going on in our politics. I'm not going to be talking about the New York Knicks game 3 with President Trump because that's meaningless. I don't care about the entertainment. I know a lot of people are like, oh my God, Donald Trump showed up and the Knicks lost, and who cares? Who cares? Donald Trump didn't make the Knicks lose. The Knicks made the Knicks lose because they're not good enough and they failed. But there's a lot more that's going on that is far more important, that is actually changing our world, that is important, and I think we should be talking about during the middle of the week. And I don't want to wait just until Sunday to be speaking about this. So we're going to talk a little bit about what happened with Karmelo Anthony, what's happening in Iran, and as a bonus, we'll probably also be talking a little bit about Act Blue and what's been happening in Congress today. But I want to start off with some breaking news that many people may not be aware of yet. It'll be out in the evening news tonight. You'll hear about it tomorrow, of course. And it's that the Democrats will tell you that we're going into World War III again, and that, all the Americans are going to die. Your son's going to be drafted. Gasoline's going to go up to $15 a gallon, blah, blah, blah. None of that is actually true, but you'll hear that tomorrow. And the reason why you're going to hear that tomorrow is that tonight, as we are speaking, the United States has been striking back against Iran. And we have taken an opportunity Iran shot down a U.S. helicopter. Both servicemen of the United States that were in the co-pilot, they were able to get rescued on the edge of Oman, on the opposite side of the Strait of Hormuz, opposite from Iran. And they're safe. They got back home okay, but we had to retaliate, as Donald Trump promised that the United States would do. And we are seeing that retaliation now, a little bit yesterday and some more bombing today, taking out some of the water infrastructure in Iran and some additional military targets at this moment. And most notably, according to the BBC and other internationally credible news agencies, we are hearing that Donald Trump is saying that this is in part because Iran is taking too long, that they are using delay tactics. And as we have identified on this channel, that Iran is playing a propaganda political war against the United States and against the Trump administration at this time because they can't win a military effort, a military war. And I think this is very much coming from the IRGC. Now, for those who are new to the show and new to our commentary, very simply put, Iran knows that they cannot beat the United States in terms of military might. They cannot beat the United States in terms of economics. And what they can do is that they know that Democrats in America are, well, they're in love with Orange Man Bad. Orange Man Bad is the mantra of Democrats and the far left. We're talking about Harvard, Columbia, the academia, the activist far left, and many of the elected politicians in America and candidates who would like to be elected. They are all about Orange Man Bad. So anything that delays the war, the conflict with Iran, anything that extends that conflict or injures more of the U.S. military, anything that would cost more money and perhaps raise up inflation or the cost of gasoline, anything that Iran can do that will influence the 2026 midterms, well, that's something that Democrats will use against Donald Trump, and that will help to, they hope, that will put pressure on Republicans, who would then put pressure on President Trump to try and appease Iran to back out and to agree to the terms that Iran wants rather than the terms that the United States wants. I don't think that that idea, that plan of attack, that political attack, I don't think it's working. But that is probably the best hope for Iran, especially for the IRGC, which is in a fight for control of the Iranian government. The Ayatollah and the mullahs, who are the religious leaders of Iran, they have been making the meetings and negotiating with the United States in good faith. And that's why we always hear these developments in the race, in the meeting about Iran. And you'll hear Donald Trump say that something was agreed to. Then the IRGC, a separate, more militant wing of Iran that's in control of and trains terrorism around the world. They train the terrorists in Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and others around the world. They come out and make a statement saying Donald Trump lied. Then about 24 hours later, you'll hear the official government of Iran, their prime minister, their president, and or the Ayatollah will come out and say, no, Donald Trump was right. And that we did make this or that agreement, that this step was taken towards a ceasefire and or a peace deal. So while this is going on, we're really fighting two different factions, two different governments in Iran, because those two factions are fighting in Iran right now to see who will be the actual leader going forward. And the military conflict that we keep seeing, the attacks that are attempted against the United States and oil tankers, that according to Donald Trump, there have been several tankers that have been getting through the Strait of Hormuz without a lot of press, not a lot of hoopla, not a lot of acknowledgement, and Iran basically didn't even notice that we were doing this. Well, the ones who are attacking all of that, that is the IRGC. So I think that with this latest round of military action, reinforcing the fact that the delays are not going to benefit Iran. The political warfare has been acknowledged, and we're not going to sit around and just allow it to happen. The United States is taking proactive action to try and end that. I think that's very interesting. Not everyone knows. Not everyone is thinking of it in those terms, but I believe that is the correct reading of what we are seeing in the last month in the conflict with Iran. But I'm always happy to hear your voices and to hear what you think about that. So this has just come out, and just so people are aware, as of this moment, the price of oil is currently $88.34. Now, as you can see, over the last month, there has been a significant drop in the price of oil. This is the Brent crude pricing, which is usually what is quoted out there. And if we look at it in just the one day, you can see that the price in the morning was $87. It dropped down. Then, as the United States made its retaliation attack, we see that the price moved up to 88 and 46 cents. So it went up about $1.50. That's not a signal from the world indicating that they're afraid that we're going into World War III, that the United States is sucked into a forever war in Iran. That is not an indication that we're going to go all out like we did in February and March, that we're going to be bombing consistently and taking out Iran. It's just a military reaction. It's not a big deal. It seems the world is indicating at this moment, live, that the world still believes that the peace deal is being worked on, will come through, it will get to fruition. There will be a ceasefire and a peace deal, and relatively near term. That's what the markets are telling us. That's what we're seeing the reaction internationally at this moment. But the left-leaning media will not phrase it in that manner. Again, you may not like this war or this conflict. You may not like how Donald Trump has handled it. Maybe there are people who are hate watching the show and they love Iran. They love Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, terrorist organizations around the world. Maybe they hate America being a great nation. So maybe you're happy hearing the tactics that Iran is using. I'm not. But, I'm trying to make sure that you are informed. And after the show, all the links of everything I am showing you will be available so that you can make up your own mind, because you are an intelligent adult. And I believe that when you're given information, you can make up your own mind and do what you think is best with that information. Unlike mainstream news media that believes that they have to tell you exactly what to think and how to feel. And of course, vote blue no matter who. That is what the mainstream media wants. I want you to do whatever you think is best for you. But I wanted to cover that because that is the breaking news at the moment, that we have gone back. I want to take a moment. We have some comments here. And folks, this is about the First Amendment. I thank each and every one of you for stopping for a few moments or for the show to watch and see what's going on. I look forward to all of your comments. And on Instagram, you may need to go to Facebook or YouTube or X or Rumble to leave a comment. I'm not sure if I can see the Instagram comments, but other than that, I always love the interaction, whether you agree with me or you disagree with me. I'm happy to hear. I'm only giving you the facts and my conclusions, my experience, my knowledge on what we are seeing as a fact, and then saying this is the most logical consequence. If you think I'm wrong, I'm happy to hear your voice. If you think I've missed something that is breaking news or important, let me know. Let's have this conversation with 100 countries that watch this program on a regular basis. I'm happy to do that. Now, here are some of the comments here. Wait a minute. Why is this? No. Give me a second to try and improve. No. What I want to do is to improve the size of the. There we go. There you go. Now you guys can see it. Okay. I want to make sure that it can be seen. So we have a couple of comments in here. And I know that the first person that was making a comment was Bronner just before the show. By the way, if you're on YouTube, I do have a poll that is going live right now. Please do take a moment to answer the poll that in the live chat on YouTube alone. I'm very interested to see what people have to say and think about that. Let's see here. Where did we leave off? We have a comment here from Chris, who's in Binghamton, New York. Good to see you, Mike. Hey, how you doing, Chris? Well, as many people may or may not know, I lived in Binghamton, New York for over 20 years. I think it was 22 years or so. I used to own a house out there before I came back to the Bronx, which is where I'm originally from, and I'm in right now as I am speaking. So I'm glad to see my audience from Central New York and Southern Tier. I know there's a few people who are watching and involved. Thank you for taking some time to be here with us. Good to see you, Chris. And again, thank you, Brana, for being here with us. I look forward to everyone's comments as we go. Chris says that he's doing all right. That is some of the best news that I can hear. That everyone is doing well is one of my highlights of my day. I always love to hear that anyone who watches this program is doing well. That makes me happy. So I'm glad to hear that. All right. So that was the breaking news that people may not have heard about yet. And what is the reason? What's behind the tit for tat fighting with Iran? It is that the IRGC is separate of the government of Iran. They are fighting because they want to fight to the end. They're more than happy to have their 72 virgins in heaven. They want to fight because they believe that they can't back down. They want control of the government of Iran. And that's why we keep seeing this skirmishing going on, which is not something that is mentioned in the mainstream news media at all. They should, but they don't. But that's because they have an agenda. So with that, but the big news, oh, wait a minute, we got some more comments here. I always love having the comments, and I do want to respond. Of course, you can super chat and you can do a Rumble rant, and I can get to those a little bit faster. But at the moment, let me keep going with the comments. I see that Bronner says, I'm against the war in Iran. Of course, I am against all wars, but this is another illegal war. I understand that many people who are more libertarian believe that the conflict with Iran is illegal. It is not. It is definitely within the powers of the president under the War Powers Act and the Unified Authorization of Military Forces. Donald Trump hasn't broken the law. I know Democrats have said they broke the law, and I know that there are many people who are libertarians who don't like war and or are more isolationist, and so they're against war, but that's besides the point. The reality is we do have a conflict. It is a legal conflict. No, it is not a declaration of war, but that isn't the only way that a president or the United States can fight a conflict with another nation or even organizations like terrorist organizations. So there is that. So I get it. You're against war, but the world conflict happens. So there is that. The thing we need to do is understand, what is the conflict about? Is it worth it? If it isn't worth it, then you should vote against people who support the conflict. And if you think it is worth it, and when I say that, I mean long term, not next week. I mean, in the next 5 years, will this benefit the United States? I say yes, because it will reduce the amount of terrorism in the world. The more we defeat Iran, the IRGC, their capability to make missiles and drones, which are being used to kill people in the Ukraine as we speak, the more that we are able to drain their funds so they cannot fund Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and all of these various terrorist puppets that they have around the world, well, that means global terror goes down. Deaths around the world go down. The world becomes more stable and more peaceful. It may not feel like it at this second, but the long-term impact is that the world becomes more peaceful. And that, I think, is worth it. You may disagree, and that's fine, but that's how I see it. And I just want to make sure you're informed on why I see it that way. But I wanted to move into the conversation about Karmelo Anthony. That was the big headline for today. And then at the end of the show, it won't be that long. We're not going to be on, this isn't my Sunday show, which can go for 5 to 6 hours. We'll be an hour or two. But I do want to get to Act Blue because that is some other breaking news. Yesterday, and I will get to the other comments. I will get to them. I see your other comment, Bronner, and I will get to that. But Carmelo Anthony yesterday was convicted of murder and sentenced to 35 years. And there's a lot of people who are losing their minds about this. And I believe most of the people who are upset about this, the leaders who are pushing the negativity, the messaging that this was unfair, that this was racist, that this is just bias, or the KKK. And I'll show you a bunch of the messaging that's out there right now, trying to convince people that this was somehow a rigged jury or a rigged trial, that it was unfair from the beginning. They're lying. They are flat out lying. And I have to say that if I were part of the jury that had to decide the Carmelo Anthony case, not only did he murder the young man, Metcalf, but he also should have been sentenced for life. He should have gotten the 99 years, not 35 years with the potential for parole in 17. Now, I know some people will say, well, Mike, that's unfair because he's a young man. He's only 19 now. He was 18 when the last year, when the murder happened. He made a mistake. He can get out in 17 years and still have decades left in his life. He can still live his life. Even if he has to serve the entire 35 years, well, he'd get out in his mid-50s, almost 60, and he'd have a couple of decades living a free man. And my answer is he shouldn't be able to be a free man. He killed someone for no reason whatsoever. He is a dangerous, psychopathic. Well, that's maybe too far. He willfully killed another human being for little to no reason whatsoever. And I know a lot of people are upset about that. A lot of Black people are upset about that because they're insisting that this was justified, that this was okay. It was not in any way, shape, or form. Not according to the entire 7-day trial. 21 witnesses and 6 witnesses from the defense. Every single witness agrees that this was not necessary. The murder was not necessary. That it was Anthony, Carmelo himself, who was the aggressor in this. No, he wasn't the first one to put hands on. Yes, one of the Metcalf twins was the first one to touch someone in the conflict. That Carmelo Anthony got pushed. But realistically, if I push you, that doesn't mean you get to kill me. That's beyond an overreaction. That is a dehumanization. That is not valuing other human beings' lives. It is criminal, and that is something that should put you away for life, for 99 years. And if it were up to me, he would be gone for 99 years. Now, let me take a step back. Maybe there's some information that people are unaware of, because there's a lot of misinformation that is going out about this trial that many people have talked to. And I've listened to several lawyers talking about this. Nate, the lawyer, is one very good source. There's another I have up here that I'll probably be playing in a little bit, talking about this case. So let's be very clear. There was a track event. Carmelo Anthony was a member of one of the track teams, opposite a competing team with the Metcalf twins, 2 different track teams. Now, for whatever reason, only the Columbia track team, that's the Metcalf twins, their high school had a tent. So there was going to be a thunderstorm. Carmelo and his school did not have a tent. They went into a dugout initially. They were told they couldn't stay in the dugout. Carmelo then finds his way into the tent of the Columbia, the Metcalf team. Okay. And he was asked to leave 15 times. According to the eyewitnesses there on the scene, including those in the defense, Carmelo was asked not once, not twice, not three times. He was asked about 15 times to leave because he was not wanted. He was trespassing. And at the end of those 15 times, Carmelo was pushed, which was the inciting incident for, well, actually not the inciting incident. That was the moment in which Carmelo pulled out a knife and stabbed one of the Metcalf twins in the chest one time, and that wound up killing him. The knife was a 5-inch knife, not 1 inch, because there is a member of Congress who's like, oh, it was just a 1 inch. It was like a Swiss Army knife. No, the actual blade of the knife was 3.5 inches. With the handle, it was a 5-inch knife. This is not a tiny knife. This is not a Swiss Army knife. This is a partially serrated 3.5-inch blade knife that was stabbed. And I know some people go, but he was only stabbed once. Well, that's all you need to kill someone. You don't need to stab him 100 times. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was a crime of dispassion. That Carmelo did not appreciate the life that he was taking. And to be fair, that's because of critical race theory. And I believe that the reason why you see so many Black people who are reacting to this is because of the consequences of critical race theory and the intersectionality movement that we see in colleges that has been applied to high schools and even elementary schools. White people are evil, Black people are victims, and you can do nothing to change that. That is a lifelong label that is put upon you. That's Ibram Kendi. That is his ideology that has been swept into all of the schools and have been pushed out, especially at the collegiate level. White people are evil. Any minority is a victim. You are a victim for life. You are evil for life, no matter what else you do. And you cannot correct that. And when you have that mentality that is drilled into generations from kindergarten all the way through college, and you're just saying that every day they're being reinforced and taught this, and they are being told, white people, look at white people do this, they're evil, and you're a victim. When you're being told that all of the advancements, all of the changes that have happened in America since the 1960s, since the civil rights movement, and all the things that have changed are non-existent, and that the battle today is there is worse racism in America today than there was in 1970, that's the messaging that kids are getting. They think they are the first ones to be fighting for their rights, especially as Blacks or Hispanics, as minorities, as women, that this is the first time anyone's addressing this. And they have to be the champions of these changes, which is a blatant lie. It is a blatant misreading of history. And I happen to be old enough to have seen the changes in America, to have seen, to some extent, what was previously the bias and racism of America, and the change to today. And the kids today have no clue how little racism exists and how well they do in fact have it. But the thing is, there are race hustlers that are pushing the negativity, that are pushing for more fear, for more anger, and claiming that racism is as bad today as it was in the 70s, which is a blatant, factual, empirical lie, because they get paid for this. Ibram Kendi, BLM, Antifa, the far left, the Democratic Socialists of America, they make money. The new Black Panthers, they make money off of all of this, of events like what we see with Carmelo Anthony. This is their money-making life. This is their lifeblood. We see that most recently, again, with the SPLC, Southern Poverty Law Center. We see it with that, where they're actually paying to create more racism so that they can fight it and they can actually raise more money. They actually paid out $3-4 million to expand racist organizations so that they could collect well over $80 million in trying to fight those very same individuals, those very same groups. It is just their self-preservation. And that's why you never hear Democrats talk about the solutions to racism or how they always want to fight it, but they never want to end the fight. They never want to take a victory. They will never acknowledge the steps forward because they make money off this. They make elections off of this, talking about you are always the constant victim. The victimhood mentality keeps the Democratic Party, keeps race hustlers alive and very well fed. People like Al Sharpton and many others, Ibram Kendi, again, another individual like that. So I think that's what we see with Carmelo Anthony is a consequence of that ideology, whether it's directly or indirectly the critical race theory, but it's that ideology. And this is something that we've exported to other places in the world, including in the United Kingdom. Henry Nowak died because of critical race theory. A U.S. idea, a U.S. elitist socialist progressive ideology that was exported through our colleges into England, that has been dispersed across England and to a certain extent in the rest of Europe as well, which has led to conflicts like what we saw where the British government then told the police that the number one threat in England is the white indigenous men and women, but predominantly the white men, indigenous Brits, are the danger, and anyone of color and or women, well, they're the victims. And thus Henry Nowak, a man who was stabbed to death, stabbed about 7 times by a British Sikh, S-I-K-H, that is a religious sect out of India. He had a ceremonial dagger. He stabbed Henry Nowak several times. And when the police came to the scene to see what was going on, Henry Nowak was on the ground. Henry Nowak, being the white man, was identified as the aggressor, that he was the problem, even as he said that he was stabbed, even as he said he was having difficulty breathing. He was put on his stomach. He was handcuffed. He was read his rights and died. By the time they finished reading his rights, he was dead. They still hadn't checked if he was bleeding out. We know this. We have the body cam video. We know what was said and what was done at that time. And the Sikh individual, well, he was presumed throughout the entire process as being the victim, even though he was the assailant. Again, that's the consequence of critical race theory. That's the consequence of race hustling that we see in the United States that is being exported around the world, exported in our entertainment. It is exported in our movies and our sports. It is exported in our politics from the Democratic Socialist side. And this is something that we are dealing with here in America. Some people may disagree with this, and I know I'm getting some comments there. I will catch up to them in just a moment. But that, I believe, is the core problem. We are now living with the consequences of the last roughly 20 years of pushing this horrendous racist ideology and creating more racism than actually existed in the 80s, the 90s, even the early 2000s. We have resurged that racism because it is politically advantageous and it is monetarily a benefit to certain race hustlers. And that is tearing our country apart. And we get events like this one with Karmelo Anthony having killed a young man, and it should never have happened. There was no excuse for this. All right, let me take a moment to actually look over some of the comments here. Everyone may or may not agree with me, but I'm willing to hear your voices before I go forward. First thing, I want to finish up with Bronner, who said that he has most certainly broken, he believes that Donald Trump broke U.S. law, which he has not. Remember that pesky Constitution? The Constitution and the amendments, which are the War Powers Act of 1973 and its amendments, and the Unified Authorization of Military Forces. Those are the laws of the land, not just the Constitution. If you don't like that, then you need to speak to your elected officials and have them change the UAMF and or the War Powers Act, and only have the ability for presidents to do what is stated in the Constitution. But as a nation, that isn't the Constitution is not the only power for a president to enter into a military conflict. You may not like it, that doesn't make it illegal. He goes on to say, Congress has not declared war. They don't need to. And we can pretty up the language by calling it a conflict, but it's a war. I call it a conflict because technically that's what it is, because Congress has not declared war. Now, you can call it a war. Most people do call it a war, but even with that, it still is not illegal. As much as people may not like it, that's just a fact. Let me go on to some of the other comments. This is going now, I believe we're going to go more into, whoops, there we go. There we go. So we have another comment here. This is from Gracie, and she says, there is just no winner in this. One family still gets to see their son, though. This is a lesson in just walking away. Well, that's a great point, Gracie, and that's something that many people have pointed out, and they've said, well, he wasn't allowed. This is part of the misinformation that many people have received, that, well, Karmelo Anthony, he couldn't leave. He was surrounded. 21 witnesses plus 6 of the defense plus video. That was not true. Karmelo Anthony could leave. He was asked to leave 15 times. He could have left. He had the ability to leave that situation without any violence. He chose not to. And there are many people who are pushing a message to justify what Karmelo Anthony did, either because they emotionally want to believe in the victimhood that they have been taught that Black people must be a victim, to justify what this young man did, or to make a profit off of that. They have pushed this idea that, oh, no, but he couldn't. He was surrounded. He wasn't. That he had no escape route. He did. They weren't going to let him go away. They asked him to. He refused. So that is the reality there, and thank you for mentioning that. Gracie mentions he is eligible for parole in 17.5 years. Yes, and I would have preferred that he was eligible for parole in 45 years. Again, he took someone's life unnecessarily, unprovoked. And I do not believe that an argument about whether or not you can stay in a tent is worth murdering someone. Look, remember, when Karmelo Anthony, when the police arrived on the scene and Karmelo Anthony admitted that he committed this murder. So this entire trial was very straightforward. It was very simple. There's not a lot of complication. Karmelo Anthony was on the scene. We had over 20 witnesses, and Karmelo admitted to the police that he did it, that this was something that he did. So the question of, did Karmelo Anthony kill one of the Metcalf twins? Did he do that? Yes, he did. That was never a question. So the only question is, was it justified? Was Karmelo Anthony fearful of his life? And there is no evidence, even from the defense and the defense witnesses, that indicate Karmelo Anthony was in danger of his life. It's very difficult to even say that he was in danger of getting a beat down. Now, as someone who's grew up in the Bronx and through the very violent years of the Bronx, remember the crack cocaine craze that took over much of the nation, which started in the cities and was very, very prevalent in the Bronx. Yeah, we had violent times. We've always had violent times in the Bronx. And I've been in many, many a fight as a youth. And I've lost many, many a fight as a youth. And yes, I've seen gangs beat up on one kid. They don't usually die. You get in a fight, you lose the fight, you generally don't die. And we're not talking neither Karmelo Anthony nor the Metcalf twins. None of these kids are gang kids. Again, another misconception that has been put out on the internet. None of these kids are gang kids. None of these kids are supremacists, neither white nor black supremacists. None of them. They're just high school kids on different teams, football and track. That's it. So no, that isn't applicable. So when he took the life of this young man, which was never in question, he did it. We know that. He deserved 99 years. He deserved a life sentence with potential parole at 45. If people disagree with me on that, I really want to hear why you disagree. We have more information to go over on this, by the way, but I'll talk about that in a moment. Let me see some of the other comments. You don't get to stab someone just because they shove you. Exactly. That is, and therefore he gets 99 years, not 35. He doesn't get parole in 17 and a half because someone shoving you, even if someone punched you, that doesn't equal I get to stab them. Let me see. We got a comment here from Bronner who says, I don't see how the size of the knife or the number of stabs is relevant. The intent is relevant. Well, the arguments that are being made online to defend Karmelo Anthony from many of the race hustlers who are pushing it out, and they're going out into the social media sphere, is that, well, no. In fact, there is a member of Congress, Jasmine Crockett, and I'll get to her comments in a moment. She's one of the individuals saying it was a tiny little knife. It was just a Swiss Army knife, downplaying the magnitude to try and make it seem like that this was not a life, that what Karmelo Anthony did was an attempt to take a life. Therefore, they try and minimize the danger of the knife and the nature of the knife so that it makes you more sympathetic and empathetic with Karmelo Anthony, but that is unjustified. It is unrealistic. But that's why they talk about the knife in the manner that they do. It is to make you more sympathetic to the murderer than the victim. Joel is here with us. All right. Hey, Joel. I got a lot of comments. I love this. So Joel says, I've seen so many videos of poor logic applied by people making commentary on Karmelo Anthony's verdict. Well, I'm trying to have very clear logic and clear facts that exist from the trial, from what many attorneys have reviewed on this, the case law on this, the overall situation, the context as well, so that we can get a better understanding of this. Because in our society, we can't rely on people there's a lot of people out there who just want to push the emotions. They know this is an emotional button. A young black man going to jail for the rest of his life, if it were my choice, but for the next 35 years, that's a very emotional button for people. The fact that it was a white man that was killed, a black man that did it, a lot of people remember from our grandparents, my grandparents, the great grandparents of many of the youth of today, well, they had unjust, unfair courts, kangaroo courts, where a black man doing anything wrong, and very often doing nothing wrong, well, he would be thrown in jail for life. But nowadays, that's not the case. You can't just make up a charge. This isn't like, what is it? The movie, the book and the movie To Kill a Mockingbird, where one of the sharecroppers was a man who only had one arm because his main arm was shredded in a cotton machine on a farm. It was a farming accident. And he was accused of using both his arms to sexually assault a woman. If you've read the book, you know what I'm talking about in To Kill a Mockingbird. Well, this is the black man that was accused. Again, he's injured. He didn't have the capability to hold this woman down to do what he was accused of. And yet, she had accused him. He was found guilty, and he was to be killed. He had a death sentence. Now, this is all about the trial, and we find out a lot of the details. And as it winds up, even though the man was innocent, he was still found guilty. That was the South, Southern Democrat South of the 1930s and 1940s and even the 1950s. That's not America today. Not even close. So there is a big difference, but that message, that image, that feeling that many, if some of these kids, their great grandparents, or even their grandparents who heard about this from their great grandparents, they have talked about this. They have emotion lingering on it, but it has nothing to do with the life these kids are leading. So this is dredged up angst from the past that has nothing to do with the present, but race hustlers will use that emotional leftovers to make themselves rich. And we will talk about that in a moment. We got a comment here from Gracie who says, but would the defense have wanted someone like me or Clarence Thomas on the jury? I bet they just wanted soft on crime people on the jury. They would never have allowed me or Clarence Thomas in there because I'm going by the law. I'm going by the actual facts of the case. I'm not being emotional. So the defense instantly would say Mike's a conservative Republican. Justice Clarence, he's obviously also a more conservative justice. They follow the law. They don't allow or try not to allow emotions to sway their opinion. Get them off. They're not allowed on the jury. That's why the jury didn't have black people on it, because both the prosecution and the defense get to pick the people they want on that jury. They have they have the right to remove certain jurors from the actual case, from the jury, so that they can get the best that they, either for the defense and for the prosecution, they both get to choose between them, the jurors. And someone like me or Clarence Thomas, well, the prosecution would love to have me, but the defense would hate that because I'm not swayed emotionally, and their case depended entirely on emotion. So they got rid of it. So the jury, by the way, let me debunk yet another of the lies out there that have spread about this case over the last year. And that is that the jury was all white. No, they weren't. That's a lie. That is a manipulation of race hustlers lying to the public, because that gets black people all riled up, and they say, oh my God, we're back in the 1930s and they're just trying to kill a black man. No, that's not true. The jury was made up of white people, Asians, and Hispanics. That's the way the jury wound up. Now, were there more whites than everything else? Yes, but there were Asians and Hispanics, and I believe one Indian man, not native Indian, but from India, one Indian man that was on the panel. So, as I understand, that's the jury. You can't say what. That's a good question. Let me ask this. So, let me ask this question. You listening to the left, listening to the race hustlers that are trying to make people get upset, the Antifa types out there right now, the socialists and progressives, they want to turn this into another George Floyd. I've heard people concerned about this. They're like, oh my God, we're going to have another summer of love. This is going to be another George Floyd riots for the entire summer. This is going to divide America, and we're going to have a civil war, a race war. It's finally going to happen. I don't think so. I don't think that's going to happen. But there are people on the left who are trying to do that. They want to have that because they made a ton of money. Remember, after the George Floyd riots, wound up providing BLM with $90 million. Now, what happened to that $90 million? The various leaders of BLM, they bought themselves mansions. They went out and they had new cars, new clothing. They were able to get cushy jobs for their other family members. The money was spent. There is no more. That $90 million doesn't exist anymore. BLM is going broke. They have no more money. They spent it all. And the thing you should ask about that is, and what programs to help Black people that BLM ostensibly said they were collecting the money for? What programs did they create? What did they do that benefited Black communities anywhere and across all of America? And the answer is they didn't. They didn't promote and they didn't help any Black community across America that I am aware of in any documentation. No one has seen it. They took the money, they made themselves independently wealthy, and BLM's out of money. Now, BLM, they still exist. They need another race hustle to get another $90 million from people that are like, oh my God, the Black people, we've got to help them. Give them the money. And so they want this. They want this to be racial. They want there to be riots so that people, the very same people that gave money for George Floyd and BLM and the Summer of Love in 2020, that those same people will give money today because of Karmelo Anthony, so that the members of BLM, the leadership, can get rich and get richer. It's kind of sad, but that's the motivation behind all of this. It's not actually justice. This isn't about justice. This isn't about what's fair. This isn't about what's the law. This is about people getting rich. That's what it's about. But let me go on. With this. I know some people are not going to like this commentary, but it's true. And for anyone who wants to say, oh, but Mike, you know what? You're not white. Excuse me, you're not Black. Screw you. All right? Don't try that stupid stuff. And I know someone will see this and go, but you're not Black. You can't be Black. Screw you. I'm Black. Mom and Dad made sure of that. I'm Black. You don't like how I look without the emotion at the situation? I can't help you. But this is the reality, and I'm as Black as I need to be. I'm a Black American, period. Full stop. Anyway, we got a comment. So Bronner says, it's a total lie. I'm 60, grew up in Virginia, and I see far less racism now than I did as a kid in the 70s. I know that the saying that racism is as high today as it was back in the 1950s is a lie. But if you ask the kids today, the ones that are in BLM, the ones that are part of Antifa, the kids on the college campuses that are running around and protesting, you ask the people who are out in front of the courthouse for Karmelo Anthony in Texas, they will tell you that racism is as alive and as viciously important today as it was in 1950. The SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center, will tell you that racism is destroying America as much today as it was in 1950, which is a lie. It is a demonstrable, empirical lie. But that's how they make money. So they have to make people believe that. Otherwise, they don't make any money and they'd have to get another job. And they don't want another job. It's real cushy to raise up a bunch of money when you don't have to do anything, because the problem doesn't really exist, at least not to the extent that they're trying to make it seem like it is. Not to say that America has no racism whatsoever. It does. Every country in the world has racism. That's not unique to America. But is it the main issue in America? It is not. Not in 2026. Okay, let me go on. Let's see. So Bronner says, when I was around 17, I worked at a gas station. There were 3 or 4 Sikhs who, that's again, that Indian sect, religious sect. He worked with them. They seemed like very peaceful people, but I always felt something was off about them. Nothing threatening. Well, the Sikh, those who are Sikh are like anyone else. They're a little bit more isolationist. They stick with their own people more. They have a mentality from India about class. There are classes of people in India. We don't have that in America, but they do in India. And the Sikhs were raised in there. They're one of the higher class people. So that is a factor for many of them in dealing with other people, whether or not they see you as being the same class as them or a lower class than them. So there is that. But no, I don't think they're inherently violent people. Generally speaking, they're not. But like any person, there are good and bad people in every organization, every sect, every ethnicity, every religion. There are good and bad people and people that make stupid decisions. And this is true for the Sikhs in England as well as what we're seeing here in America. Bronner goes, Bronner doesn't agree with me on Iran, but very much agrees with me on Karmelo Anthony. Okay. Let's see. Bronner asks, so their argument for claiming it was a small knife is merely to promote the idea that the intent was not murder. Yes, that is exactly it. It is to give sympathy and empathy and say that this was just a miraculous, it was pure bad luck that the one stab wound up penetrating and causing him to bleed out, which is a lie. It wasn't a pen knife. It was not a Swiss knife. It was an actual knife. Joel comes to me and he says, many were trying to create a self-defense and try to make Kyle Rittenhouse parallels. I'm going to get to that. I will. Because, yeah, I even saw someone was trying to compare this to the Bernard Goetz case from 1984. Literally, they are reaching as far. You're going to be surprised. I'm going to show you some of the evidence where people are trying to make the comparison between Karmelo Anthony and Bernard Goetz in 1984. It doesn't make sense. It's not true, but they try because they want to push a racial agenda because that's how they get paid. Let me see. I think I've caught up with everyone. No, here we go. Gracie has a comment. Anthony, if he shows contrition and acts right while doing his time, could be out before he is 40. His victim is not coming back. That's true if he's got contrition, but as I am aware, and I have not been able to find it, if I am wrong on this, please correct me, anyone in the audience, but Karmelo Anthony's never apologized. He has never apologized for the murder of this young man. Not once. So there is no contrition. There is no remorse. He's cried. He cried when he was arrested. He's crying in the courtroom when he was found guilty and he's going to jail for the next 35 years. He's upset, but he isn't remorseful. That's a very different thing. He thinks it was perfectly fine to kill that white boy because he touched him. And that's what he said. That's what he said at the scene. It seems to be what he continues to believe. Again, Carmelo Anthony did not, and I can't fault him for this, but he did not take the witness stand in his trial to explain if he felt fear for his life. Well, he could have gone on to, now he would be cross-examined, of course. He would have to explain himself, and he would have to give us a reasonable understanding of his fear, why he thought he was going to die, if that's what he felt at the time. Well, he could have taken the stand and he could have shared that. That's what Kyle Rittenhouse did. He took the stand, which was a risky thing to do, but it was important in his case to prove or to explain what he was feeling at the time. Why did he take each of the actions that he took? And in large part, why did Kyle Rittenhouse, who was justified in the shootings that he made, why did he get off? Why was he not sentenced to jail? Because he spoke and explained in his own words, with the prosecutor coming at him 1,000%, but he explained exactly why he had done everything he did, and the jury, understanding the context, understanding the evidence, found Kyle Rittenhouse not guilty. Carmelo Anthony could have gone on into the witness stand, and he could have answered the questions and done the same thing. Whether or not the jury would have believed him, I don't know. I don't know what he would have said, but he had that right. And very often in these kinds of cases, it's sometimes necessary, or depends on the lawyer. Some of them will say, you should probably, if they don't have a lot of evidence, they don't have witnesses that are agreeing with them, when the evidence is overwhelmingly against what the defense is saying, very often they'll say, no, you should go up and you should actually speak. Now, whether the lawyer, who was a public defender, and I'll get into this in a moment, but that whether or not the public defender, the lawyer for Carmelo, whether he explained this to Carmelo or not, whether or not Carmelo decided that he would not go on to the stand for whatever reason he may have had, we don't know. That's not a conversation that's public, and it's obviously attorney-client privilege. We will never hear about that unless Carmelo decides to explain it to us, but he didn't do that. That's also part of why he got found guilty. Let's see. We caught up here, and Joel says the Southern Poverty Law Center had to fund racist events to fight racism and get more donations. No, it was because they needed more donations. The means to get more money was to justify their existence. The best thing that could happen to America is the SPLC closed down because they're no longer needed. The best thing that could happen is a lot of these race hustlers and the organizations built around them to do nothing but make money off of racial tensions in America, if they were to close because America is more meritocratic and it's not rampant racism all over the place, well, that would be good for America. That would be the best thing. It would be great that we don't need the SPLC, that we don't need an Antifa, we don't need a BLM. But these people make millions a year. Collectively, as organizations, they make tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars a year. So, as an example, the SPLC, again, they spent $4 million on racist organizations. In particular, they spent about $250,000 on the Charlottesville riot, that event. They gave $270,000 to one of their informants illegally, channeled through illegal bank accounts. They gave one of their informants $270,000, and that enabled the white supremacists to create the Charlottesville protest that wound up ending with someone dying. And because of that event in Charlottesville, the SPLC made $80 million. They spent $250,000. They made $80 million. That's why they did it. And that's kind of sad, because if you think about it, if the SPLC didn't exist, there is an argument to be made that the white supremacists would never have the money or the opportunity to recruit other people, because they were a dying breed. There aren't a lot of them. It's not a significant group. They would never have been able to afford to have the rally in Charlottesville, which would never result in a riot, because the Proud Boys, remember, it was the Proud Boys that took on the white supremacists in Chicago, even though the left hates the Proud Boys and they say, well, they're racist, even though their leader was Hispanic, but whatever. Okay. But that whole thing would never have happened if it weren't for the SPLC, or at least that is an argument that can legitimately be made, that if the SPLC wasn't involved, this may not have ever happened. And that woman would be alive today. And the white supremacists would have less of a voice in America. It's very interesting when we think about this all the way. Now, again, I'm not telling anyone watching that you have to agree with what I say. I know the left believes that since it's a black man talking to some white people and the rest of the internet, you have to believe everything I say. I'm not a leftist. I'm a conservative Republican. I'm giving you information, and I am also giving you my conclusion and the consequences of that information, of those facts. You may disagree, and if you do, let me know why. Don't tell me I'm Uncle Tom. I always hear that. Don't tell me I'm not really black. That's just stupid. Have a real substantive reason why you disagree with me. So let me go back to what we saw here. So Karmelo Anthony is determined to have been guilty. And immediately, as soon as the verdict was handed down, before he got sentenced to 35 years, we had this in America.
Meanwhile, outside the courthouse, emotions were running high, too. A crowd of more than 100, mostly Anthony supporters, gathered after the verdict, and at least one fight broke out. Security has been tight throughout the day.
So most of the people that came out were supporting Karmelo Anthony because of lies, because they were told this is a black man is being railroaded. This is a kangaroo court. This is unjust. The facts don't matter. The feelings matter. White people are evil intrinsically. This is obviously, that's where you're hearing the lies. Oh, it's an all-white jury. They're just picking on a young black man. They're going to kill a young black man. These are the things that were being said and are still being said across America right now, because someone's getting paid for that. They're making money off of this. And I wonder how many of the people who are out there would really understand, would stay there and say they support Karmelo Anthony if they knew the truth. In fact, I think I have a video of that. And there's a lot of people who were involved in this. There was a former Texas congressional candidate who was arrested at this event. Now, as it turned out, it was a black man, a black Republican, who was intoxicated. That's the former Texas congressman. It's Sheldon. What was Sheldon's last name? There he is. Sheldon Daniels was arrested. Apparently, he was drunk. Okay, he's a Republican, apparently, from the news report. And he had run for elected office before. And he was on the scene. He was one of the two men that got arrested in front of the Collin County Courthouse in Texas. I thought that was quite interesting. So we have these people, they were there, and not only were they there, they were so rambunctious. They were looking for activity. And I showed you the first video of the confrontation that was going on, of how they were screaming, both sides, the supporters of Karmelo Anthony and those who do not, were screaming at each other right in front of each other's face, inches away. That's not healthy for America. That's not healthy, especially when we have such an open and closed case based on the merits and the evidence. Even the key witnesses of the defense said that Karmelo Anthony was wrong and that he was the aggressor and that Karmelo Anthony was not in danger for his life. The defense witnesses said that. Witnesses said that. Okay, but that's one aspect of this. Let's see. And here's one of the things that really caught me. And I just saw this just before we went live. Jasmine Crockett, who is a former congresswoman. She's in Congress until January. She no longer has a district. She did not run for Congress in 2026, the midterm elections. She instead ran for the Senate. She lost to another Democrat, Tallarico. So Jasmine Crockett no longer has a political career. She is done. She is out. She has been voted out by Democrats, and she has no future in politics. Most everyone should be very happy about that, because Jasmine Crockett is a minstrel, and that's all she is. She is a race-baiting hustler and a minstrel, and that's her job, and she's very good at it, but it's very sad. So Jasmine Crockett went online, and she was the one. She said, according to this is the New York Post, that she would have stabbed Austin Metcalf in the defense of Karmelo Anthony. Lame duck, Representative Jasmine Crockett of Texas, failed congresswoman, suggested during an Unhinged episode podcast that she too would have stabbed the track star Austin Metcalf after Karmelo Anthony was convicted on first-degree murder in this racially charged case. It was Tuesday's episode of Clock It with Crockett. And she let loose a torrent of falsehood. She lied. Mind you, she is a black Democrat and a woman. She has been lauded as a anti-Donald Trump TDS kind of Democrat. She is obviously, she has some success and some following to get her into Congress in the first place. Not enough to remain in Congress, not enough to get to the Senate, but yet enough to have been elected in the first place. She has had a national voice, and it is sick to hear that voice. And she went on the internet and lied to the public. She lied, and here it is. She lied about the size of the knife and the type of knife it was. She literally says, wait a minute, it was this. She's like, was it like this? You know, it's a tiny little knife. And she goes on to mention that, was it a switchblade? She didn't know what type of knife it was. One of her hosts says, well, it's like a little Swiss Army knife. They're lying to the public. This is a currently elected member of Congress talking about a court case that is highly racially charged. And she is running around saying that she would have killed the same people, that she would kill white people for daring to touch her, not to attack her, not to beat her down, not a mob. That a white person were to dare touch her, she would stab them in the chest. This is a congresswoman this is saying this. There are black people across America that are hearing a congresswoman say that it's okay for a black person to stab a white person because the white person is white. That is pure, unadulterated prejudice. That is racism. That is criminal. But she's saying this. People are looking at her as a leader. The Democrats have lauded Jasmine Crockett as being someone that young black women should emulate for some damn reason I don't understand. But they would want their young daughters to be like this woman who became a congresswoman. She's a lawyer, and she became a, which means she's a lawyer, means she knows better. She knows that she's lying when she's talking to the public, and she's encouraging black people to attack other people merely because of the color of their skin. This is dangerous. And telling the black people that they are justified in their violence because, well, white people, critical race theory, white people are evil and minorities are victims for life. Therefore, you can stab them. Go right ahead. That is what we're hearing from Jasmine. And I find that just like, and she says, well, you know, her other justification of this, and she's like, well, you know, this guy was over 6 feet tall. He's 300 pounds. It's a 300-pound man who is fighting against Karmelo Anthony. He's only 5'8". He's like 185 pounds. Well, let's clarify that lie that Jasmine Crockett gave. So Austin Metcalf, he isn't 300 pounds. He was 200 pounds, which is only about a 15-pound difference between him and Karmelo Anthony. They're both football players. Karmelo Anthony's about 185, and Metcalf is 200. Metcalf was 6 foot tall. Karmelo Anthony is 5'8". So he's smaller, but not tiny, not by any means. And he's also a football player who's a little stocky, a little hefty. So the justification that Jasmine Crockett is giving isn't accurate. Again, she's misinforming the public. Well, it's this guy, he's got twice the weight and he's a giant, and Karmelo Anthony's this little midget, and this big, huge guy is beating Karmelo Anthony. Again, that's misinformation coming from a congresswoman who is online. And this is spreading to the black community, telling other black people that this is okay. This is your justification. Well, remember, Karmelo Anthony was not beaten. He had no injuries when he was arrested a year ago after stabbing Austin Metcalf. He had no injuries. He was not beaten. Not by Austin, not by the people in the tent. It didn't happen. But you listen to Jasmine Crockett and people will tell you, but Mike, Jasmine Crockett, she has a title. She's a congresswoman. She wouldn't lie. She has to know what she's talking about. She always tells the truth because she's a Democrat and she's a black woman and she's a congressman. So she has to be telling the truth. No, she's lying out her buttocks. She's a liar. Nothing that she said was true. Here it is. Quote, if a 300-pound man is beating me, like on top of me and beating me down, I'm not limited to my fists. First of all, yes, you still are. Yes, you are, because that is not deadly force. That's not justification for deadly force. Second thing, Austin Metcalf wasn't 300 pounds. He wasn't on top of Karmelo Anthony. He wasn't beating Karmelo Anthony. None of that applies. But this is the message that Jasmine Crockett, a minstrel, is giving to the black community, encouraging other black people to attack people who aren't black because they don't like that race. It's prejudice. This is racism, pure and simple. Jasmine Crockett, I'm glad that she is no longer in. And by the way, I got that wrong. Anthony Karmelo is 5'11" and 162 pounds. Let me get that corrected. I said he was 5'8" and 185. I got that wrong. He's 5'11", as tall as me, and he weighs 162 pounds. So he's a little heavier than me. Okay, that's not the same thing as a 300-pound giant beating down on Carmelo Anthony. Not true. Didn't happen. But Jasmine Crockett doesn't care about the truth. Jasmine Crockett, her entire campaign as a congresswoman running for Senate has been race. Donald Trump is a racist. Where's the evidence? She doesn't even try. She doesn't even try and present any of that. And Carmelo Anthony is an angel. You would think that she was the mom of Carmelo Anthony. He's an angel. He's completely innocent. There's no reason he had a penknife and he's this little tiny guy fighting this big, huge sumo wrestling giant. And he was being beaten down even though he had no injuries and no one touched him. And every witness confirms that. Yeah, this is insane. This is insane. But let me go on. And then you started seeing things like this. And I kind of found this weird. So I want to make this a little bit larger for you guys, because this is what we're seeing on X. And it's just, it makes no sense to me. Maybe it makes sense to everyone else, but it doesn't make sense to me. So this is posted by Brian Krasenstein, who is a massive TDS Democrat activist. And he goes, Carmelo Anthony found guilty of murdering Austin Metcalf. Biased jury and corrupt judge. The judge is corrupt now. Is there any evidence of that? No. It's a biased jury. Is there any evidence of that? No. No. Not a shred of evidence of any of this, but they're going to say it anyway. And people are looking at this guy, Brian Krasenstein, and they're going, oh my God, he's famous, he's popular, he's powerful, he's in the Democratic Party. I got to believe him. People quote him. The news media quote him. He must be telling the truth. He made this up. And he's making this quote because this guy has a comment. So I want you to hear.
Murdering Austin Metcalf. This is a biased jury.
Let me bring it back to the beginning.
Carmelo Anthony was just found guilty of murdering Austin Metcalf. This is a biased jury and corrupt judge.
No evidence. This is a biased jury and a corrupt judge. This is the quote that Brian Krasenstein decided to quote.
We all know it. No, let's go back. That's what Republicans would say if this went the other way.
So the guy who said this, that Brian decided to quote, told you that isn't what was said. That isn't the situation. Okay, he goes on.
I'm going to say right here, flat out, that law and order worked. Our court system and judicial system is working.
So the guy's actually saying the exact opposite. He said that somebody who wants to take advantage of this situation, they would say that it's a biased jury and a corrupt judge. Now, somehow he thinks the Republicans would say that. No, it's literally what the Democrats are saying. That's what Brian wants to say, but that's not the case.
Unlike the other side, we shouldn't jump to the conclusion that the jury is biased or the judge is biased or corrupt.
No, we shouldn't jump to that conclusion. But Jasmine Crockett did. BLM, Antifa, the far left, socialists, the DSA, the Democratic Party, they're all jumping to conclusions. So that's kind of shocking to me. It's just shocking to me. I mean, you think I'm kidding about that they've been jumping out there. Look at this. These are some of the things that are popping out on the internet right now. And I don't know if you saw this, but I did. So this is the message. It's Rex comes out. This is how Carmelo Anthony's trial looked. They're spreading this. It was all about, this was racist. It was a railroad. This is back in the 1950s, 1930s. That's not true. That's not a good representation. That's not even close to fair or honest. Again, remember, the left The defense said that Karmelo was at fault, that he was not in danger of his life. The defense witnesses refuted the argument of Carmelo Anthony. But they want to say, no, but it was all because of racism. The black people who were the witnesses in this case for the prosecution and for the defense agree that Carmelo Anthony was guilty, but I guess they're all members of the Klan, including the black people. Okay, that makes no sense. Hang on, I want to show you a quick video. Here's a statement that went out there, and I think it's important.
Better treating Carmelo Anthony like a victim. Watch this mum who doesn't know what she's going to say to her sons.
What do you want us to do? What do you want us to do at this point? What? I'm lost for words. I don't know what to do. I got 5 boys. I don't know what. I ain't got nothing to tell them no more.
I've got 5 boys, and I don't know what to tell them. How about you tell them, don't stab people for no reason? Why don't you tell them, don't get into the fight unless you need to? When people tell you to get out, get out. You can be angry. You can say, you can argue with them. But when you have a tent full of people and they're all telling you to get out, maybe at that moment you get out. And then you can complain and you can scream and shout, but get yourself somewhere where you're a little bit safer if that's what you're afraid of. And if they're going to get into a fight, get into the fight, but don't pull out a knife. Don't pull out a gun unless you have to defend your life. I'm not even upset that he had the knife. The question is, were you afraid of your life? No. And you can tell your 5 sons that when someone wants to attack you, you be prepared, you fight back, but you don't try and kill them just because they're white. This is so stupid. This is someone who is this woman is completely absorbed by emotion, and she has been completely and absolutely manipulated. I don't know what to say to my sons. You have failed your children if you don't know what to say. It is that obvious. It is simplistic. Do not get into a fight where you could die. Don't stab people for no damn good reason. There's 2 things you can tell your kids right there. 2 obvious and simple things that every parent tells their kids. I don't care where you are. You don't have to be in the South. You don't have to be in Texas. You know what? You get the same message here in the Bronx. When I was growing up in the 80s and got crackheads everywhere and they're having shootouts during the night, don't get into a fight if you don't have to. Don't stab anyone unless you have to. Don't shoot anyone unless you have to, that you have to protect your life. If you need to run, run, because you're not going to beat down 5 football players by yourself. I just wasn't that big. I was not that good a fighter that I could fight 5 football players, linebackers by myself, 250 pounds, 300, even 5 guys at 200 pounds, 6 foot each. I was a Marine. And it still wouldn't be a smart fight. It wasn't because I was afraid. It's about being smart. Teach your kid to be smart, not to go, well, they're white people, so they're evil. And if white people touch you, like Jasmine Crockett says, then you can just go ahead and stab them. No, you can't. Jasmine Crockett is a minstrel. Don't listen to anything she says. Don't listen to the race hustlers. Don't get yourself into this situation. Don't do that. Otherwise, you'll be right next to Carmelo Anthony for the next 35 years. I thought this was pretty obvious. This makes no sense. This was from WFLA TV. So it's not right-leaning. It's not left-leaning. This is what this woman is saying. I mean, she's got a little bit more to say, I think.
You can't walk away no more.
You can't walk away. But again, even the defense witnesses, black witnesses, said that Carmelo Anthony could get could have walked away. He was asked 15 times to leave. He could have walked away. He chose not to. So this woman, this young black mother, is completely misinformed. She has been listening to people like Jasmine Crockett and BLM and Antifa and the far left, and they have hustled her, manipulated her into thinking Karmelo had no choice. He had to fight because he was surrounded by a football team. Lie. He had to pull out the knife. Lie. He only stabbed them once. You don't need to stab someone more than once when you killed them the first time. This is stupid. But this is what's out there. And folks, the stupid doesn't end here. Let me show you. Come on. My computer's heating up. It's 80 something degrees, humid as hell. So my computer is running slow at the moment. There we go. Come on. Share this. All right. It's going to do this. Share this tab. I'm waiting for my computer to catch up to me. What Joel says, Texas has had so many stellar elected congresspeople. Al Green, who's been kicked out. Jasmine Crockett, who's out. Shirley Jackson Lee. Sadly, she died, but she was an idiot. Remember when Shirley Jackson Lee said that an M16 weighs as much as 5 boxes. It fires an M15 fires a 50 cal round. She had no idea what she was talking about. She hated the Second Amendment. Horrible person. Come on. Why is this not? All right. I'm waiting for my screen to catch up because it's not doing what I want it to do. I'm afraid that my computer is overheating right this second because it won't give me the image that I want. Why are you on this? Okay. Whoops. All right, that's one. There it is. Oh, that's why it didn't. All right. Hang on, sorry. So here's one of the comparisons. This is how far the left is going right now. Sorry about the delays with the computer. But this is how the left is trying. They're grasping at straws. It's just like when Dan Penny was a white man. He got away with it. Are you sure about that? Did you see what happened to Dan Penny? And it's like, well, Dan Penny was unarmed, restrains a man threatening people's lives. Media frames Penny as a killer. Well, that was true. And then, let's see, Karmelo brought a knife to a track meet, murders a student who asked him to move. Media says it's self-defense. Yeah, did you notice the difference between those two cases? I did. It was pretty shocking. It was amazing how different they were because it's unfair. It was always unfair. Here's another one of the cases that I thought was really crazy. Here it is. They're comparing Kyle Rittenhouse to Carmelo Anthony. And I made a comment on this, which you can see here. It's on the side. Let me see if I can make that bigger. Can I? Yeah, you guys might be able to see it there. But I made a full comment here. There is no comparison. Kyle Rittenhouse, in a town he wasn't a resident of protesting. What does that have to do with anything? That has nothing. He's an American citizen. He can be anywhere in America at any time that he wants to be. He can be in any town. I can go right now. I can go to Kansas. I can go to Iowa. I can go to California. I can go to Texas. I'm an American citizen. So what's the point? I'm legally capable of being anywhere in America that I want to. So being there has nothing. Well, Kamala Anthony, he was at the track meet where he was invited. So what? He wasn't invited there to kill somebody. So that makes no sense to anyone. Kyle Rittenhouse was 17 and he was carrying a gun. It's federally outlawed. That's one, not true. Two, in the state, in Kyle Rittenhouse's home state, he could legally carry the firearm. He crossed state lines. And when he went to Kenosha, he was now in a state where it was illegal. It wasn't federal. That's state law. And by the way, that was resolved. During the trial, they went through that. He was not charged with that. So that's not a factor. They go, well, Kyle, Karmelo Anthony, he was 17 and he was carrying a knife. Isn't that much more innocent? It's about intent. It's not whether you have a rifle or a knife. It's intent. They're saying, well, Kyle Rittenhouse was much more dangerous because he was carrying a gun and it was illegal. And, and here Karmelo, he was just carrying a knife and that was legal. No, it's about the intent. Kyle Rittenhouse didn't bring the firearm to just run down the street shooting black and white people all over the place. That isn't what he did. That isn't what his intention was. Nor do I believe that Karmelo Anthony intended to go and stab a white boy that night. I don't think that was his intention. That is what he did. And Kyle Rittenhouse defended his life from people who had guns, who were chasing him in a mob and were shooting at him. That did happen. So very, very different circumstances. It goes on. Kyle Rittenhouse was attacked after warning the attacker he would shoot. That is true. He did warn people. He did try not to shoot people. Fair enough. And Karmelo Anthony was attacked after warning the attacker he would defend himself, saying, if you touch me, you're going to find out, is not the same thing as saying, don't shoot. Don't shoot while holding a firearm saying, I will return fire. There is a big difference between those two situations. People with weapons or with firearms were chasing after Kyle in a mob and they were trying to shoot him. And he says, don't shoot at me. Leave me alone or I will fire back. I will return fire and defend myself. It is a very different thing to say, you got to get out this tent. Don't touch me. And I touch you. That is not deadly intent. That is not a life-threatening situation. You're about to get kicked out. You could have got kicked out of a bar, could have been kicked out of a hotel. You can be kicked out of an arcade. You can be kicked out of a lot of places. That's not life-threatening. The comparison does not work. It goes further. Kyle Rittenhouse killed 2 people and injured 1. But Karmelo Anthony only killed 1 person. This isn't some kind of contest about quantity. This isn't about the quality of the kills or and I don't believe Karmelo Anthony was running around just trying to stab every white person he found. I don't think that was the situation. This argument makes no sense. But this is what the left is trying to convince people because they're trying to get it emotional. They want emotion. Kyle Rittenhouse is white. Karmelo is black. Kyle Rittenhouse did all these things that were really, really bad without any context, without even telling the truth. They're trying to say, well, see, it's that critical race theory. Kyle Rittenhouse is white and he's evil. Karmelo, he's a victim. You have to support Karmelo Anthony. No, you don't. None of this was accurate. None of this is real. None of this argument makes any sense whatsoever. How about this one? Let me show you another one. And I thought this was another really stupid one. And this is from Dr. Rita D-E-D. So I assume it's Dr. Rita Dead, assuming that the last name is correct. I don't know. But this is coming from X, apparently. Due to the scars of slavery, the family of Karmelo Anthony did not have the know-how or the funds to secure a proper legal team. I'm going to get into the money in just a moment. This is one of the most racist comments I've heard about this entire situation. And this woman is pure racist. Pure racist. She thinks that based on her intersectional ideology, in terms of her progressive socialist mindset, that this is the best thing. The Karmelo Anthony and his family are all idiots. They have no idea. They have no life experience. They are just bumbling morons. So when they got money from the Give, Send, Go, basically it's like a GoFundMe, they got all this money donated to them, over $500,000, and they spent it on cars, on clothing, on a house. They didn't spend it on the attorney. Karmelo Anthony wound up with a public defender, a free attorney. They could have took them over $500,000, over $500,000, and they could have used it for the defense to get a better attorney to try and make a better case. I don't think it would have made a difference at the end of the day, but they could have. And this woman saying they were too stupid to know any better. Black people don't know how to manage money. Black people are too stupid to know that they can get a better attorney by spending money. This is sickening. This woman is sick. This quote is insane. It is infuriating because it is so damn racist. It is insanely racist. She goes on to say, he was found guilty on the back of slavery. She's blaming this on slavery. Karmelo Anthony had nothing to do with slavery. This has nothing, in no way, shape, or form, but race hustlers, the people who make money, who get power, have to convince Black people and everyone that it is emotional and this is about slavery and this is about reparations. It has nothing to do with any of that. Black people are too stupid. Black people are stupid because of slavery. That's what this woman is saying. They don't know how to handle money or to hire a professional because slavery. That's her words. Due to the scars of slavery, did not know how to properly secure a legal team. That is insulting. That is so damn racist. And this is from the left. This is the argument of the left. This is a socialist progressive. She thinks she's helping. She thinks that this makes Karmelo look better. She thinks that there are going to be a bunch of Black people that are going to be like, yeah, you go, girl. That's right. Black people are too stupid. It's kind of like Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York. Black people don't know what a computer is. Joe Biden, you're not Black if you don't vote Democrat. It's the same logic. This is insulting. I don't understand why Black people follow this. I don't know why they don't look at people like this and go, you've got to be effing kidding me. This is so insulting. This is so evil to say this. They didn't know any better. That is stupid. My God, that is insulting. That is evil. And yes, there was even the comparison to Bernie Getz. That, oh, no. Well, this was just like the Bernie Getz case. Okay. And this is, you can go to Wikipedia for this. I know, not the best source in the world, but the 1984 Bernie Getz New York subway shooting. Now, for those who didn't know, the Death Wish series of movies with Charles Bronson, that's based on what happened in 1984. And it also, Dirty Harry came out about the same time. It was also based on, in New York City, very much like today, criminals were being let off. And that was across the entire nation, but definitely in LA, San Francisco, New York. Again, the far left strongholds in America, they were just releasing prisoners. Criminals were being treated with the lightest of sentences, and they were being released, and they were committing more and more crimes. There was more violent crime then in the 70s, 80s than today. And the criminals were far more violent. Now, these New York subways were absolutely deadly. In the 1980s, early 80s, The New York subway was rampant. We had massive gang influence on the trains, walking up and down. And I don't mean the movie The Warriors, although there were gangs throughout all of New York. It wasn't just the Crips and the Bloods. They didn't exist yet. It was back in the days with Spanish Family and the Zulu Nation, and there was a bunch of others. And they were patrolling up and down on all the subways, and they would attack people, mug them on the subway, and no one would do anything about it. And the police would never show up. So you would just get beat down, stabbed, and have all your stuff stolen because a gang of kids would come and do that. That was the 1980s. That was New York City. And it was a huge, rampant flood of kids and gang members going onto subways and just picking a random person and just robbing them blind. And no one could stop them, apparently. Bernard Goetz was a man, white guy, skinny white guy, nothing imposing whatsoever. He happened to be on a train. He happened to have an illegal gun. Four kids, 4 teenagers came up to him and said, "Give me $5. A couple of them, 2 of them said that. "Give me $5. Because they were going to rob him. Those of the 4 young men who are, by their admission, were going into Manhattan to go to an arcade they had 3 screwdrivers, flathead screwdrivers, that they were going to use to pry open arcade machines so they could steal all the quarters. I know most of the kids today, you don't know what an arcade machine is. Basically, it's a video game that was standing up and you would have it in a location, in a business. You put in a quarter and you get to play until you die. If you die, you got to put in another quarter. You keep playing. Otherwise, you don't do that. I'm sure most of the youth today have never seen an actual arcade machine, but that's what they were. Think of pinball machines, same idea. And they were going to rob that. And they decided to rob Bernard Goetz on the subway on their way to robbing the arcade. Bernard Goetz shot them, pulled out his gun and shot them. All 4 of them. Shot one of them twice. Now, today, Bernard Goetz would be in trouble with the second shot. And even back then, he should have gotten in trouble for the second shot that he took on one kid in particular, because he shot him and then he shot him again. That was excessive at that point. The first 4 shots, no problem. The 5th shot, that's an excess. He didn't need to do that to protect himself. That has nothing to do, everything I just described to you, which is the essence of the story of what happened with Bernard Goetz, the threat. And many people, information was not instantaneous back then. So believe it or not, up until I was doing research for the story, I remember that we were told in the 80s that those kids had sharpened the screwdrivers so that they had sharp points so they could stab people with them, which did happen in some gangs, but apparently those kids weren't carrying sharpened screwdrivers. They just had regular screwdrivers. Still would have done the same damage. But that is the difference of, living it at the time and finding out more information after the fact. But this just tells you, this has nothing to do. It wasn't a racial attack. This was about gangs. This was in a time where gangs were flourishing in New York. There was nowhere for Bernie Goetz to go. He couldn't run away. He's on a subway car in the middle as it's traveling. There's nowhere for him to go. There's no one to support him. Very different circumstance, very different time in the world. There are no cell phones. There is no way to call 911. He's on his own, surrounded by 4 young men who have bad intentions. It's nothing like what happened to Karmelo Anthony. And yet people were trying to compare that. How about this? And we're getting close to ending this stuff on Karmelo. Karmelo's family received over $627,000. They were trying to raise $1.3 million. Karmelo had a free lawyer. Why? Because they weren't smart enough to know to hire a lawyer? No, it's because they thought that they would get more money because BLM and Tifa got $90 million, and Karmelo, well, he should be able to get at least $1 million. They thought that somebody would volunteer an attorney, and they would just actually protect Karmelo, and that they didn't have to pay for it. Someone would just donate. Someone like an Al Sharpton would be the attorney just for free, or they would refer someone to do it for free. Didn't happen. The family saw this as an opportunity. If people gave $600,000, why wouldn't they give more? And by the way, since the trial ended, since Karmelo has been convicted, they have gotten more money. More money is being sent to Karmelo after the trial. After he's been proven guilty, they were sending out more money to him. So the family wasn't wrong. They got $600,000. Well, they'll give more. Why? Karmelo's a black kid. That's a white guy. Critical race theory. The black guy's evil. Karmelo's a victim. You have to support the victim. You've got to give him money. They gave him $600,000. And the family, rather than using that to get a good lawyer, got nice house, nice car, nice clothing, and wished for the best for their son. They thought that, you know what? Everyone would agree. White people are evil. Therefore, this is fixed. This is a rigged trial. This is completely wrong. And their son was going to be let go scot-free because he obviously was afraid for his life, even though no evidence of that. And they were getting money. They were getting even more money. The Give, Send, Go was still getting money up until today when it was closed. Their account, their Give, Send, Go account that had $627,000, yeah, that was cut off. But people were still sending money. And the family can open up another Give, Send, Go so that they can get more donations because he's going to appeal, obviously. Karmelo Anthony's going to obviously appeal. But they need money. And now they're going to say, they got $600,000 and they're going to say, please give us money so we can go and appeal. Well, what did you do with the first $627,000? Oh, you bought a house. Fantastic. That's nice. Oh, and you bought some new clothes. Well, that's nice. Okay. Did you spend any of the money on the attorney? No. But they're going to ask you to give them more money so that they can, what? Buy another house, buy another car, and then get another free attorney to do the trial, to do the appeal. I don't trust them. They wasted the money the first time, not because they're stupid, not because they didn't know they could get a professional, because they knew the money was going to keep coming in. There was going to be more money. I'm sure they thought they'd easily clear $1 million. So why not spend the first $500,000? Because we'll get more money. Black people will give money because Karmelo's a victim. Because progressives and socialists will say Karmelo's the victim. Obviously, because he's black. Doesn't matter what he did, so they'll give more money. I know that's what they were thinking, because that made sense. It's the only thing that does make sense in this whole damn thing. All right. Let me take some of the comments here. We've been going almost for 2 hours, a little bit longer than I expected, but let me go back to some of the comments here and let my computer get a chance to, I think it's overheating a little bit. I think my computer's overheating today because it's so hot and so humid. Let's see. So we have a comment here. Not sure if you covered this, but did Anthony's family blow the money they raised on cars and a house and others? Yes, that's true. They could have gotten a better attorney. They could have. They didn't. Not because they're stupid, because they thought there would be more money. Let's see. I'm looking for the comments. I got a comment from Bronner. I got no comments over on Instagram. Okay. Just decided to check Instagram real quick. But Bronner says, this has been, why is it? There we go. This has been the leftist mantra my entire life. Quote, black people are not capable of doing anything without us progressive white people. It is insulting. You are correct. It is insanely insulting. Insanely insulting. And they have been saying that since the 1960s, at least. Gracie says, I heard Mark Garagos say that the trial was lost with the jury selection. That may or may not be true, but $500,000 would buy a decent defense. I don't think, a lot of people say, well, the case was lost because it was an all-white jury. Remember, that's the message that was going out. It's not true. Yeah, there were, I think, 6 white people, and there were a couple of Asians, there was an Indian, and a couple of Hispanic people. That's a diverse group of people. The case was lost the minute that Karmelo stabbed Metcalf Austin in front of witnesses for no reason. It was over at that moment. There was 21 witnesses. They all saw it. The case is over. He admitted he stabbed him. The only issue in this whole case at any point was, did Karmelo have a reason to stab Austin? The answer is no. This case is done. This is the smartest thing that Karmelo could have done was plea bargain, which maybe his attorney didn't understand. Maybe Karmelo thought that he was going to get up. Maybe his family thought, well, we're stars now. We're internet overnight stars. Everyone's donating. I mean, we got $600,000. We're getting more money day by day. They're never going to convict. Karmelo's going to get off. He's going to win because all these people are like black power. Maybe that was it. I don't know. Bronner mentioned he had just seen The Warriors. Yeah, it was a good movie. I like that movie. Let's see. Gracie says, I used to visit New York when I was a kid, and the vibe was totally different. Then Rudy Giuliani became mayor, and it became awesome. Loved Rudy's New York. I loved the New York back in the 70s and 80s. It had far more character. Was it a little dirtier? Was it a little more dangerous? Kind of. Not for someone from New York. New Yorkers, people who grew up and were raised in New York, we were used to the subway and dealing with the gangs and the crime. You knew where to go. You knew where you shouldn't go. You knew to be on guard if you went to somewhere you shouldn't probably have been. It wasn't a big deal. But, that's because you're a native New Yorker. You grew up all around you. You grew up with this. You understood a lot of it. I can imagine people visiting, not as much fun, not as friendly. And I can understand why you would want Rudy Giuliani's New York, which was a lot safer, but a lot more sanitized. It lost a lot of character. So I understand that. Let's see. Yes, Gracie, that's correct. And Bernard gets, the other thing that's important is Bernard gets another reason why it's not the same. Bernard Goetz did go to jail for 8 months because he had an illegal weapon. He had an illegal gun. How? Because it was unregistered. Now, mind you, Second Amendment, New York has always hated the Second Amendment. And so Bernard Goetz was in danger. He was arrested because he had 2 unregistered guns in his house and 1 unregistered gun on him when he shot the 4 kids. By the way, Bernard Goetz, if you didn't get it from the name, he was white. The 4 kids that he shot, 2 of them were Hispanic. 1, I believe, was white. Actually, 3 were Hispanic and 1 was white. But Bernard Goetz was white. And so they were like, oh my God, it's racial. It had nothing to do with race. It had to do with the kids were trying to stick him up. Bronner says, I remember the Getz case. Even there, the DC local news tried to paint the gangbangers as victims. Oh, yeah. They were absolutely trying to say, well, they were innocent kids. They just asked them for money. Yeah, it's obvious. It was obvious in the 70s. It was obvious in the 80s. They were going to rob him. Everybody knew it. Everybody understood. That's why Bernard Getz got off of all the murder charges or the attempted murder charges, because it was obvious to everyone. We understood. Bronner goes on to say, if they asked for money for the purpose of providing a defense and then spent the money for personal gain, that is fraud. It is. It is fraud, but the GoSend me money, the money that was raised for Karmelo Anthony and his family was for his living expenses and his legal defense. Because it was for his living expenses as well as legal defense, they could spend that money on buying a house, buying cars, buying clothes. Yes, they could. So it isn't fraud because of that addition. When they put up the GoSend, it said legal defense and living expenses. Living expenses allows them to spend the money on anything outside of just getting a lawyer and legal defense. The assets should be liquidated and the money returned to the donors. It will not. It will not, because of that extra line that says and living expenses. Because they put that in there. Whoever set up, again, they're not stupid. Whoever set up the Give Send Go, who set up that online donation, was very smart and made sure they worded it exactly right. It's for living expenses. Therefore, they can spend it on anything they want. Gracie says she thought that this has been an excellent show. MSN and the mainstream media will not cover this story honestly. No, they won't. They will not go into the detail. They will not explain these things. They will not show you the examples like I have. Again, I'm not telling anyone you have to agree with me, but I am making sure you understand exactly what happened here and why. And I'm taking the time to do it because you're an intelligent adult. You deserve to have the facts, to know what is the misinformation and what is the truth, and to evaluate that so that America can be a better place, because we don't need more race tension just because someone wants to get rich. We need justice, and justice was served. In fact, I think that Karmelo Anthony is lucky, because if I had the option, I would have gave him the death penalty. But he was up for 99 years. I would have gave him 99 years. I didn't have the option of the death penalty in this case. Therefore, he couldn't get the death penalty, but I would have given him that. Now, I am a harsh law and order kind of guy. I believe that when you break the law, you get punished, and you should be punished to the degree of your crime. Murder is a pretty big crime. I have no problem with the death penalty. I'm not against it. I'm in favor of it. I think it's actually a good thing. But others may disagree with me, and that's okay. Bronner says, yes, I can see the technical reason of why Karmelo Anthony's family was able to use the money, even though they spent none of it on his legal defense. It is fraudulent. There's no question that it's a fraudulent thing. It misleads the people who donated money. It was very misleading because they weren't using it on legal defense. So it was misleading, but people didn't care. The people who were donating, the progressive socialists, those people who were into black power, black supremacy, the people who, like that mom that we showed you earlier, who's like, I don't know what to tell my 5 kids because it's racism. It's the racisms all over, when in fact, it has nothing to do with racism. I'm not saying there is no racism in America. This case has no racism. This is nothing about racism. And you tell your kids to grow up to be law-abiding citizens and not to do stupid things, and don't put yourself into a stupid situation. That's the easiest thing. My mother taught me that. My friends' mothers taught them that. Not everyone listened, of course, but our parents taught us that. It was real straightforward. Don't be stupid. Don't do something stupid. Don't just run down the street and stab somebody. Don't do that. That's stupid. You're going to go to jail or you might get killed. Don't do something stupid like that. That's all you need to tell your kid. Oh, but what about white people? What about them? What about them? Most of the people, let me be fair. Let me be real direct about this, folks. About 1/3 of all the people that I went to kindergarten with were dead by the time I got out of college. By the time I was 21, 1/3 of all the people that I grew up with in kindergarten, in elementary school, were dead. By the time I got to college, about 1/4, 25% of all the people that I went to kindergarten with, went to elementary school with junior high school with, were in jail. Okay? Those are the real numbers. That's the reality that I lived through. You don't see that now. That's what I lived through. Life expectancy when I was a teenager was 18. Then it became 21 and 24 for a young black man, but it was 18 that 1 in 4 black men would die before they got to be 18, before you got out of high school. Those were the numbers I was growing up with. So you can't tell me things are worse now and that there's more fear and more danger in a damn safer world. It's just, you can't tell me that. But that's that. Okay. Last thing, I'm going to just wrap before we wrap up because we're at the 2-hour mark. So I just want to cover this. And by the way, I thank everyone who's taken some time to be here with me to go over this case, to leave all of your comments. I appreciate each and every comment, everybody that's speaking. I love you guys. You're so great. Great audience. And I love that. And I know it's the middle of the week. It is a Wednesday. So we're going to go a little bit faster. I only have one last thing to talk about here. And then I'll have, in a little bit, I'll have the links for everything up on the show. But I wanted to talk about Act Blue. Now, a lot of people may not know what Act Blue is. Act Blue is an organization. Their only job is to collect money for Democrats. They're called a bundler. Politically, they're a bundler, which means they get all the money. A bunch of people, businesses, like when you hear Democrats say, I don't accept money from businesses, corporate, I don't take corporate donations, they're lying. Often they're very much a liar. We've heard this from people like Josh Riley, Anthony Brindisi. They've made that lie. I don't take money from corporations. That's not true. That's not true. They take money from Act Blue. Act Blue gets money from the corporation. So Philip Morris, as an example, or name any GE, I don't care. Name whatever corporation. They give money to Act Blue. Act Blue splits up the money and they give it to all those Democrats. And every one of the Democrats says, I can't take money from a corporation. They take money from Act Blue. Act Blue took the money from the corporation, as well as rank and file regular people. That's Act Blue. That's what they do. They take money from everyone that the Democrats can't take money from, that they're not supposed to take money from, and then they clean the money, essentially. It's almost like money laundering. They clean the money, and so then they give it. So when you see Richie Torres of the New York 15th District, or you see Josh Riley of the New York 19th District, when they say, I don't take congressional money, corporate money from businesses. I don't take money from business. Big business doesn't give me money. Did you take money from Act Blue? No one ever asked them that, because the media that follow politics, they know that they took money from Act Blue, so they won't ask the question. And the media, so they get a pass on that. And the public doesn't know to ask this question. Did you take money from Act Blue? Did Act Blue take money from those corporations? The answer is Yes, they took money from Act Blue. Yes, Act Blue took money from corporations. Yes, they did, in fact, take corporate money. It's just been cleaned. So they can say, no, the money's direct from Act Blue. I don't know where they got it from. It was not a corporation. I didn't take money from a corporation. Liar. And again, Act Blue only gives money to Democrats. $19 billion. They have been giving $19 billion since 2004. $19 billion was given to Democrats year after year after year. Only to Democrats. Now, there is no actual equivalent on the right. There are smaller organizations. Win Red is something similar to Act Blue for Republicans, but it is insanely smaller, and it's only been around for 5 years now. Win Red's been around since 2019, 2020, so that makes it about 6-7 years that they've been around, somewhere in that range. They're relatively new. Democrats have been doing this kind of stuff for years. They used to do it with Acorn, another organization that no longer exists because of James O'Keefe, but they've been bundling money for decades. Democrats are very good at this. But besides the apparent lie that Act Blue will take money from corporations, give it to Democrats, and Democrats get to say, I didn't take corporate money, even though that's a lie. So that's something that's been baked into this. One of the other things that's really important to understand is Act Blue. Democrats use Act Blue in the worst way possible. Remember when in California, the Palisades, the California Palisades were burning? Like the entire city was burnt. And we now spent $2.5 billion. Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, got $2.5 billion from the government, built one house. Where's the rest of the money? No one knows. No one knows. This is a fact. You can look it up. Don't believe me. You don't have to. One house has been built. $2.5 billion disappeared. We don't know where the money went. Came from the federal government. Came from your taxes. Disappeared. But on top of that $2.5 billion, Act Blue was getting donations. Remember, Elizabeth Warren and Gavin Newsom were trying to ask the public to make donations for all the people like Spencer Pratt, who had his house burned down and had nothing. Nothing. He was asking, well, Gavin Newsom came out and said, well, will you make a donation so we can help people like Spencer Pratt, who no longer has a house? All the people who are the big movie stars and the people who work and make movies in the background and all regular people who just happen to live in the Palisades, they all lost their houses. Make a donation, and we'll be able to help those people to get a home, get a hotel, get food, make their lives. Okay. So Elizabeth Warren and Gavin Newsom went on TV and they were asking for that. And they said, to donate, go to Act Blue and make a donation on Act Blue so we could give money to the California wildfires. What they didn't tell anyone, what Elizabeth Warren and Gavin Newsom did not tell the public, Act Blue was taking a commission. They were taking 4% out of the money that you give. So if you gave $100, they took $4. They gave $96 to help people in the Palisades, like Spencer Pratt and all the people who lost their home. And Act Blue would take the $4 and they'd give $1 to Elizabeth Warren, $1 to Gavin Newsom to get reelected, and another $2 would go to, Jasmine Crockett and to Kamala Harris so that they could run for elected office again. Gavin Newsom would get in $100 using Act Blue. Act Blue would take the commission. They'd give some money over to Richie Torres in the New York 15th District. They'd give some money over to Josh Riley in the New York 19th District. They'd give a bunch of money to a bunch of Democrats across this country. And all of that money was supposed to be going to rebuilding the homes in the Palisades. Act Blue didn't have to take a commission. but they did because they wanted money for Democrats, because Democrats want it. Mind you, you could have directly made a donation to the to help California wildfires, help people fight the wildfires, and to help the people who were in need, had their homes burned down. You could have made, there were links, there were other organizations. You could have made donations directly to churches and to help organizations directly. Elizabeth Warren, Gavin Newsom could have given people a link that directly. So if you donated $100, $100 went to help people in need. Instead, they on purpose made sure that you went to Act Blue. So Act Blue would have your name, would have your address. They would know your credit card information so that they could turn around and ask you for every Democrat that lives near wherever you are can ask you for money because they have all your information. So they could sell that to Democrats and say, hey, no, Bob lives in your district. Go ask him for money. He gave money for the California wildfires. Go ask him for money. They could take some of the money that you were donating and again, split it to all the other Democrats. It was evil. It was literally manipulating people and not telling them. And at least they could have said, by the way, Act Blue takes a commission, but they're going to make sure the money gets to the people who need it. So there is a commission. Fair enough. I mean, they got a business. They got to run their business. It's only 4%. It's only 4%. Don't worry. That's not a lot of money. 96 out of every $100 is going to go to help people in California. But $4 is going to go to Act Blue. And by the way, Act Blue gives Elizabeth Warren and Gavin Newsom and the Democratic Party money. It helps them get reelected. So if you're a Democrat, hey, great news. You get to donate to a Democrat and you get to help people with the California wildfires. But if you're a Republican, a Libertarian, a conservative, independent, you don't want to give money to Elizabeth Warren. You don't want to give money to Gavin Newsom. You don't want to give money to Richie Torres or Josh Riley or Chuck Schumer. You don't want the Democrats to get money. You gave it to them anyway. That is deceptive. That's Act Blue. Guess what? Act Blue is now being accused of illegally taking money from overseas and giving it to Democrats. That's a crime. Oh, a lot of people may not know that. If you're running for a federal office, you cannot take money from overseas. That's just illegal. So Act Blue is taking money, again, just like with the corporations. Corporation gives the money to Act Blue. Act Blue gives it to the candidate Democrat, and Democrat gets to say, I didn't take any money from any corporations. It's a lie, but they get to do that. If money's coming from overseas, I don't know. Maybe it's coming from Iran and it's going to Ilhan Omar. But they can't give money to Ilhan Omar. Iran can't give money directly to Ilhan Omar to run for re-election. So they give it to Act Blue. And Act Blue gives Ilhan Omar the money from Iran. Because now Ilhan Omar goes, I didn't take any foreign money. I took money from Act Blue. That's what they do. That's legal. But Act Blue illegally took the money from Iran. They can't do that. So that's the accusation right now. They're being investigated. Democrats don't like this because, again, this means that $19 billion, they're going to get the pipe shut. They're not going to get all this money. They're going to have to admit when they take money from corporations. They're going to have to admit when they take money from other countries. They're going to have to admit what they've been doing. And they can't run their little schemes. Oh, you're helping these good, nice people. Give the money to Act Blue so we can skim money off the top. So we can take money without telling you about it so that it'll help a Democrat when you're just trying to help a bunch of people in need. Act Blue is in trouble for that. And this is what happened. The CEO of Act Blue was brought in front of Congress She had to get a subpoena. She was supposed to show up. They just invited her. Then her lawyer said, nope, we're not going to go there. If we don't have a subpoena, if we're not ordered by the court to show up in Congress, she's not going to show up. And then the attorneys told the CEO of Act Blue, take the fifth. Say nothing. But wait a minute. If she didn't do anything wrong, if Act Blue didn't do anything wrong, if they didn't knowingly break the law, why would you not actually, why would you not answer anything? Let me show you what I mean here.
Foreign funds have no place in American political campaigns. American elections are for American citizens only. Ms. Wallace-Jones, in 2023, I sent you this letter with 5 straightforward questions with a goal of confirming that foreign funds are not in our elections and that Act Blue had adequate fraud prevention measures in place. You replied a month later with a 4-page letter describing your fraud prevention policies and procedures that you had in place at Act Blue. But according to...
Okay, so this guy's kind of boring, but real simple. So you had a member of Congress they were asking Act Blue, the CEO, how they got their money. Were they following rules and regulations? Were they following the law? Pretty much that's what he's asking. She sent back a 4-page document saying, this is the way we follow the law. These are all the rules and the ways that we take money that is legal so that we can give it to Democrats. By the way, this guy is not. This is Congressman Steele, Steil. He's not. He's a Republican, but no problem. But yeah, she says, here's 4 pages of how we follow the law to give money to Democrats. That's what he said. He asked the question. He got 4 pages back from her. Okay.
To the New York Times, your response to this committee may have been false and misleading.
And the New York Times said that was a lie. The New York Times, which is a left-leaning news organization. This wasn't Fox News. It wasn't OAN. It wasn't News Nation. It was the New York Times, as left-leaning, a credible news organization as you can have. And they said, no, Act Blue's lying. The evidence, the truth, we can't hide it. Even the New York Times can't hide. It was so obvious and so blatant, they broke the law that the New York Times said, we can't cover that up. It's just that obvious. Okay, let's go on.
Ms. Wallace-Jones, when you signed this letter to me, did you believe that this letter was false and misleading?
On the advice of my counsel, I respectfully decline to answer this question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Okay. So this is Ms. Wallace-Jones, the CEO of Act Blue. And 134 times in Congress, taking questions from members of Congress, every question she took had the same answer. She said that 134 times in a row. Would not answer anything. There isn't a single question that she asked that she answered. That they asked that she answered. Because her lawyers said, take the fifth. It doesn't matter. If they ask you your name, it doesn't matter. They could ask you if the sky is blue. Do you breathe air? Are you alive? Doesn't matter what they ask. Take the fifth. Answer nothing. Because anything you say will incriminate you. She is under oath. She's under oath. It's called perjury. It's a federal crime. If she lies, that's it. If anything she says is proven to be a lie, if she admits something and anything she previously, like that 4-page letter, if that turned out to be a lie, she is a criminal. She goes to jail. I don't know it for sure, but it looks like this guy who's got the he looks like a fish and he looks pissed off. I'm pretty sure that's one of her lawyers. And this guy on the other side of her, who looks like Lurch. I'm pretty sure that's her other lawyer. So her lawyers, I believe, again, I could be wrong. It just could be two guys that are old and pissed off, but it looks like they're both her lawyers. They don't look like they're happy, and they're standing right behind her, and she's going, I'm not going to say a word. This is how screwed up Act Blue is. Let's watch this.
Ms. Wallace-Jones, before you sent this letter, did you believe, was it brought to your attention that this letter that you sent me was false and misleading?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Look, I don't usually insult people about the way they. On this program, I tend not to insult people, most people, about the way that they look. And, politics is politics. We got beautiful people and ugly people in politics. It doesn't matter. Politics is about your voice, not your looks. But I got to say, this guy, come on, you can't tell me he does not look like Ted Bundy, who played Lurch in the 1970s for the Addams Family. You cannot look at that face and not tell me he looks like Ted Cassidy. That's right, Ted Cassidy. He looks just like him. It's Lurch from the Addams Family. I mean, I hate to say that. I know the guys, if he ever hears that, he's going to be like, that's kind of an insult. Well, I mean, it's a famous character in a TV show, but I'm sorry, dude, you look just like it. So, okay. So I just wanted to point this out because this is going to get buried in the news media. No one's going to talk about this. No one's going to tell you that Act Blue, that Democrats have been breaking international law to get their donations, that they have been lying to the public and they have been manipulating the public as well as breaking the law to get money so that they can maintain power. Because they don't care about you. They'll break any law they need to so that they get to win an election, so that they get to maintain power. If you tried to do it, if I tried to do it, if a Republican tried to do it, we'd be in jail tomorrow. But the CEO of Act Blue, she's not under arrest. The CEO of Act Blue is still making sure that Democrats get your money and money from I don't know where overseas. Maybe it's Iran, maybe it's Russia, maybe it's China. I mean, it's not like the Democrats don't have a bunch of Chinese spies working in all of their campaigns, like Eric Swalwell and Dianne Feinstein and Linda Sun with Governor Hochul. I mean, it could be Chinese money, could be British money. I don't know. It could be almost anything. But they're hiding it from you. They want this story to die. They don't want you to think about this because you might not vote Democrat if you go and ask your local Democrat and ask them, or even the candidates that are Democrats, and ask them, did you take money from Act Blue? Did that money come from a corporation? Did that money come from overseas? And watch how fast your Democrat will say, oh, no, it's perfectly legal. It was all fine. No, don't worry about it. Don't even think about it. It's okay. That's not true. That's not true. And they don't want you to ask that question. And they don't want you to have to confront the Democrat, whether a candidate or elected. They don't want you to confront them to make them tell you the truth because it's easier for you to believe a lie and for them to have power. But I wanted to make sure now you know. If you don't want to follow up on it, you don't care, that's fine. But now you know. They will lie and cheat and take money illegally just so that they can have power. Last couple of comments, then I'm going to let everyone go because it is the middle of the week. We've been on for 2.5 hours, and my computer is overheating a little bit. Let's see. Bronner says, perjury didn't seem to harm Bill Clinton much. Yeah, I know. Well, if you're powerful enough They don't care. They'll let it go. Joel says you rang. So you saw it. Okay. I'm not the only one that saw that guy looking like Lurch. All right. And final comment here. Joel says, I don't think either side want to dig too deep into where the money comes from. And that's why we have to. And that's why we should, because they don't want to. And that when they're hiding stuff and we're not asking a question, that leads to corruption. Every time that they hide an answer from us and we fail to ask for the answer, the next step is, oh, I can get away with it, so I'll be corrupt. That's why we have to ask the question. All right. Hey, at least Bronner thought this was a great show. Thank you. I wasn't sure how it would work out on these 3 topics, but I wanted to share it. Please, everyone, consider it. If you found this interesting at all, if you agreed, you disagreed, but you want to support the First Amendment, please subscribe. You can also hit the like and share button. I'd appreciate it. It would be helpful, but do subscribe. And until Sunday, every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I do my main show, which is the Sunday show at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please do drop on by. Doesn't matter what politics you have. I'll cover a lot of issues at that time. And we'll talk about the things that no one else in the media will. I thank you. I want you to have a great day. I love you all. And I'll talk